HTML input attributes. This chapter describes the different attributes for the HTML input element. The value attribute. The input value attribute specifies an initial value for an input field. Here we have the example. Input fields with initial default values. So we have the form element. Inside of the form element, we're going to have a label element and an input element. So the label element, we're going to have a for attribute equal sign double quotes, and we're going to have the f name. It's going to be short for first name, so we can click to see how it's going to look like. And this is the one, and we already saw this example a bunch of times, so nothing special here. We just have the for attribute and the label element. We have the type attribute of text, ID, name. We have an input element, the type attribute, so that is that. Now we have the read-only attribute. This one is cool. The input read-only attribute specifies that an input field is read-only. Read-only input field cannot be modified. However, a user can tap to it, highlight it, and copy it to text from it. The value of a read-only input field will be sent when submitting the form. And here we have this example. So we're gonna go to Visual Studio Code. We're gonna create a file. I'm gonna name it index.html. I'm just gonna press Shift exclamation mark so I have a template to work with. I'm gonna press Ctrl plus to make the file look bigger. So this is my file, index.html. And I'm just gonna type this example. So we have a form, and we're gonna type inside of the body section. We're gonna have, let's make it like this. We're gonna have a form. We're gonna have the form element. Inside of the form element, we're gonna have our label, two labels, and two input elements. So we're gonna have let me see, label element, like that. And okay, label element. Okay, we're gonna save it. We're gonna open it to see how it looks like. And okay, we have nothing here. Okay, so we inside of the label element, we're gonna have the for attribute. We're gonna have the for attribute. Then we're gonna set it equal sign double quotes. We're gonna set it to f name. That is gonna be short for first name, like this. Okay, so we're gonna put colon at the end. We're gonna close the label tag. Okay, it's already here. And then we're gonna have a line break. Then we're gonna have the input. We're gonna have the input element. And the type is gonna be text. Okay, the type, we have that the type is gonna be text, so that equal sign double quotes, and the type is gonna be text. So that is that. We're gonna have the ID. So the ID is gonna be f name. So it has to, the ID of the input element has to match the for attribute of the label element, like that. We're gonna have a name, and again it's gonna be equal sign double quotes, and in this case the name is gonna be again f name, like this. Outside of that, we're gonna have a value, and the value is gonna be John. Okay, John. And now we're gonna have read only. So read only, and then we're gonna have a line break. And the read only is very important because now we're not gonna be able to modify this value. This value is John, so we cannot erase it, update it. We cannot modify it, so we're gonna save it. Okay, so here you have first name John, for example. I can click here, but nothing's gonna happen. So up to this point, this is how our website is gonna look. So up to this point, we have the read only. Now we're gonna go to, okay, we're gonna have another label, and we can just well, let's just type it. So we're gonna have another label like this. Okay, we're gonna have a label. Okay, so we're gonna have a for attribute, and this time the for attribute is gonna be L name. So okay, L name, so it's gonna be short for last name, so you can have an idea what to type here. You always have to, for your for attribute, you want to give it some meaningful names. If it's last name, you can put L name, or just, I don't know, another example would be last M, for example. I don't know. So we're gonna have another line break. We're gonna save it, and we're gonna have an input element in the next line. Okay, an input element. Okay, so in the input element we're gonna have a type again, and this one is pretty repetitive. So the type is gonna be text. The ID, you guessed it, is gonna be L name, so it has to match the for attribute of the label element. Then we're gonna have the name, and the name is gonna be L name. Then we're gonna have the value, and the value is gonna be let's say dough, like that. Okay, so we have here, okay, let me see, last name, okay, text, L name, dough. Okay, that's it. So we save it, and now we're gonna open our website. Okay, first of all, you go to your Visual Studio Code, you go to your file, you right click, and then open with Live Server. I just do it straight, like I press Alt plus L, Alt plus O. So that is that, and this is how our website is looking up to this point. We have the first name and the last name. The first name is John, and the last name is Doe. But the thing is, John, I cannot modify it, I cannot update it, because it's read only. As you can see here, in line 13, we have here, we have this attribute read only. That's the reason I cannot modify it. But once I go to last name, I can type, I don't know, I can type whatever thing I want to here. I can also delete it, and if I refresh it, it comes back. Why? Because after in line 16 in value though, we don't have a read only. But if I type an attribute read only, and I save it, and now I open my website, now I cannot click and do. I can click it, but I cannot do anything. I cannot modify it, update it, I cannot do anything. So right now these two, first name and last name, are read only. You cannot modify it. So that is that. That's how we do it here, and you can click and try it yourself. And this is how it's looking. The input read-only attribute, the read-only attribute specifies that an input field should be read-only, cannot be changed. So as you can see, you cannot change John, but you can change the last name, since the last name Doe here, it doesn't have a read-only attribute. But if I type one read-only and I click run, now I won't be able to modify John. And again, if I click submit, it's gonna go submit form data, but we are not dealing with a server, so we're just gonna focus all this video and the HTML part. So that is that. Now we're gonna move to the disable attribute. The input disable attribute specifies that an input field should be disabled. A disabled input field is unusable and unclickable. So you have to remember, unusable and unclickable. The value of a disabled input field will not be sent when submitting the form. Okay, and we can go here to our HTML file, and we're just gonna delete from number 11 to 17. That is the form element. So the body section is gonna be empty. There's nothing in my body section. So we can copy it, or we can just let's copy it, and we're gonna type it, maybe the next one. So I'm gonna just paste it here, and we're gonna save it. So let's open the website. Okay, so yeah, that's what we have here. Okay, so now we have the form element. You can read all this information inside of the form element. We're gonna have two label elements and two input elements. So let's make it a little nicer. So we have the label element, we have the for attribute, and the for attribute is going to be f name, short for first name. We're going to end the label tag, we're going to have a line break so it looks nice and neat, as you can see here. Okay, so we're gonna have the input element. The type is gonna be text. This is important. The type has to be text. The ID is gonna be, yes, you guessed it, it's gonna be f name, because the ID attribute of the input element has to match the form attribute of the label element. Then the name is gonna be the same. It's gonna be f name. The value is gonna be John. And now after the value attribute, we're gonna have this attribute, the disabled attribute. So now John is disabled, so there's nothing I can do here. I cannot modify it. I cannot do anything. I cannot even copy it. For example, well, I guess you can copy it. Let me see if I can copy it. John, I go here to this John. Okay, so I can copy it, but it has been disabled. Now we have the same thing goes for the last name, except that after the value in the second example we don't have a disabled attribute. That is the reason that you can see though here. But if we can go to our website and to our Visual Studio Code, and after the value we type in disable like this, we're gonna save it, and now you're gonna see that neither John or Doe, neither the first name or the last name, you can click and modify anything. It has been disabled. So that is that. Now we have the size attribute. Okay, we have the size attribute. The input size attribute specifies the visible width and characters of an input field. The default value for size is 20. Note, the size attribute works with the following input types: the text, search, tel, URL, email, and password. So we have here this example, and we can let's just copy it. So I'm just gonna go to Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna delete our form element. So make sure that the body section is empty, and we're gonna paste it here, the piece of code that we just copied. So again, I just click press shift exclamation mark to have a template, and then I just paste the form element inside of my body section. So let's open it to see how it looks like. So we have a first name and a pin. So let me see, I can put a bunch of numbers here. Okay, and the pin, let me see, I can put a bunch of numbers. Okay, that is that. We have the form element. Inside of the form element, we're gonna have two label elements and two input elements. And the first label element, we're gonna have the for attribute, and it's gonna be f name. That is that. We have the input element, it's gonna be the type attribute is gonna be text. The ID is gonna be f name. We have the name attribute is gonna be f name. And now the important part is here, the size. So we have the size equals sign, double quotes, and now we're gonna have 50. So that is the reason that this one looks the width looks bigger. For example, if instead of 50 I just type 5, the width is gonna decrease. So as you can see here, the width has decreased, and before it was like, for example, like this 50 pixels. Now it's only 5 pixels. Now we're gonna have a line break so it looks nice and neat. And if you think that is, I don't know, too close, we can make another, I don't know, line break maybe, I don't know, like this. We can save it. Yeah, now it looks a little better now. So now we're gonna go, we have in line 15 we have another label element. The for attribute is gonna be ping. Okay, and line 16 we have the input element. The type is gonna be text, And as you can see, for both, the type is going to be text, the ID is going to be pin, the name is going to be pin, and now the size is going to be 4. So you type size equal sign double quotes, and inside of the double quotes you're just going to type in the number, in this case 4, without px for pixel. So that is that. But what happened if instead of 4 I press this is how it looks like when it's 4 pixels. Let's check it out with 40 pixels instead. So I'm saving it, and let's go to the website. So now it looks really big, the width. So let's just leave it in 4 and this one in 50. So this is how it should look like. So this is the example, and you can click here and check it out how they did them. They're just adding h1 for your heading 1, a paragraph. So the size attribute specifies the width and characters of an input field, and then you have your submit button. But since we're not dealing with a server, we're just gonna focus on HTML. The max length attribute, the input max length attribute specifies the maximum number of characters allowed in an input field. Note, when a max length is set, the input field will not accept more than the specified number of characters. However, this attribute does not provide any feedback, so if you want to alert the user, you must write JavaScript code. So you have to write some JS code. Okay, so we have this example. We're gonna go to Visual Studio Code and make sure that you delete the previous code so we can have the body section is empty. And now we're just gonna grab this piece of code, and I'm just copying and pasting because this is kind of like a lengthy article, so we have a bunch of examples here. If I start just typing it, it's gonna take a little too long maybe. So we're gonna open this example and we have the same. So now, okay, so but now, for example, when I first name, when I type, for example, a bunch of ones, okay, so I can keep going. But when I go to the pin, 1 2 3 4, okay, now that's what I got, that's what I want. And the pin, when I type in 4 characters, that is my limit. I cannot go I cannot type a 5th character, and that is the reason that I'm using the max length. Okay, so let's go to this code. So we have this form element, we have the label attribute, that is that. We have the I have the label element, we have the input element, we have the type attribute text, we have the ID, the name, the size is gonna be 50, the size attribute is gonna be 50. Okay, so we have the line break, and now we're gonna have the second label with a 4 attribute is going to be pin, like that. We have a line break, we're going to have an input element with a type attribute of text, the ID is going to be pin, the name is going to be pin, and now the max length is going to be 4 and the size is going to be 4 as well. So this is how it looks like. As you can see, for the pin we only are allowed to type in 4 characters, 2 2 2 1 1 1. We cannot type a 5th element. Why? Because we are using the max length attribute, and we're setting it to 4, and the size also setting it to 4. But what will happen, for example, in the first label, we are in the first input element. After the size attribute, we're gonna have a max length attribute, and this time is gonna be let's just play around, let's just put, I don't know, 4 again, and now the size is gonna be 4. So let's just save it and let's see what happens. Okay, as you can see, for the first name I can only type 1 2 3 4 characters. I cannot type more than 4 characters. Why? Because now for the input element, for the first input element in line 13, I have a max length of 4. That is the reason. If I put a max length of 5 and I save it, I am able to type one more, so 1 2 3 4 5, but I cannot type more than 5. characters here. So that is the beauty of the max length attribute. Obviously you want, I don't know, maybe 20 per se, and let me see. So we're gonna go one. Okay, that is 20, and for your pin could be 4. So yeah, that's how it should be. So that is that. Now we're gonna go for the min and max attributes. Okay, so the input min and max attributes specify the minimum and maximum values for an input field. The min and maximum attributes work with the following input types: number, range, date, daytime, local, month, time, and week. Tip: use the max and min attributes together to create a range of legal values. So here we have this example. Set a max date, a min date, and a range of legal values. So we're gonna go to our Visual Studio Code, and we're just gonna delete the previous example so we can have an empty body section, and we're gonna paste this example here, and we can move a little faster. So we're gonna paste this form element inside of the body section, and we're gonna press Alt+L+O, and this is our code. This is how it should look, our code. So here we have enter a day before, enter a day after, and then we have a quantity. Okay, it goes from 1 to 5. I cannot go higher than 5, and I cannot go lower than 1. So this is the code. The form element, we have the label element, we have the for attribute. Okay, date max. Okay, you have this code, you have this context here, enter a day before, 1980 January -1. Okay, so you have the input element, you have the type attribute, and now the type attribute, we're gonna see $, double quotes, and now we're gonna have date. If you remember in the previous example, the type, it was text. Now the type attribute is gonna be set to date. That's one of the things that we're changing in this example. Now the ID is gonna be date max, the name is gonna be date max, and now the max attribute. So we have the max attribute, $, double quotes, and then we're gonna have this date that is gonna be, this is the example that they're grabbing, but you can choose whatever example you want, so it just has to make sense. So it will be 1979 December 31, and then you have 2 line breaks. Okay, so this is this one. Enter a date before 1980 January 1st. So here, enter a date before 1980 January 1st. So the options that we have, they're gonna be like this. We can go for this one. It's gonna be December 31 1979. Yeah, okay, it is successful. And the requirement, it has to be before 1980, so this is the last date before 1980, December 31 1980. I cannot go the 1st of January 1980 because that would be against the rules. Okay, that is that. In the second example, we have the label element. The for attribute is going to be date min, and then we're going to have enter a date after 2000, and it's going to be January 1st. Okay, so the input element, we're going to have the type attribute, and it's going to be date inside of what? Double quotes. The ID attribute is going to be date min, the name is going to be date min, and then the min attribute. So here in this one, it was the max attribute. This one is going to be the min attribute, short for minimum. It's going to be $, double quotes, and it's going to be 2000 January the second. Why? Because it says enter a day after 2000 January the 1st. This is the condition. Enter a day after 2000 January 1st. So the first date that you can enter, it will be 2000 January the 2nd. That will be the minimum. So let's go to our website and let's see how it looks like. Okay, so I can grab let me see, March. Let's go to but it's 2000. Let me see. Okay, let me type it. 2000. Okay, 2000. And now let's go for January, and I cannot go for January 1st 2000. Why? Because it goes against the rules. It has to be after January 1st of 2000, but I can pick the second. So I have January 2nd 2000. Enter a date after 2000 January 1st. So this condition is perfect. So now the third example, we have the label element. We have the for attribute quantity. We have the quantity between 1 and 5. Okay, then we're gonna have the input element, the type attribute. This time the type attribute is gonna be number. It's not gonna be date or text. This time the type attribute is gonna be number. The ID is gonna be quantity, and the name is gonna be quantity. And now the minimum attribute is gonna be 1, and the maximum attribute is gonna be 5. And you can put, I don't know, maybe 2 and 9, and save it. And now we go to our website, and now the attribute is gonna be from 2 and 9. So let's just modify here. Let's update it. Let's see how it looks like. So we go here, it's gonna be from 2 to 9. So the minimum value that I can go down is gonna be 2, and the maximum is gonna be 9. So this is how it looks like. And yeah, you can play around with this, make your own examples. So here we have the multiple attribute. The input multiple attribute specifies that the user is allowed to enter more than one value in an input field. The multiple attribute works with the following input types: email and file. So here we have a file upload field that accepts multiple values. Okay, so we're gonna delete our form element here in our Visual Studio Code, so our body section is empty. Okay, and now we're gonna paste this piece of code that we have here, the short piece of code. We have a form element. Inside of the form element, we're gonna have a label element with a form attribute of files. We have the text select files column. We're gonna have the input element. The type attribute is gonna be file, and this is kind of, I think, the for type. First we have the type text, second was the type date, third was the type number, and now we're gonna have the type attribute file. So we have type equal sign, double quotes, and then file. We have the ID, it's gonna be files, the name, files, and now we're gonna have the multiple attributes. So we're gonna save it, and we're gonna go to our Visual Studio Code. And okay, so this is how it looks like. Choose files. Okay, it's gonna send you to your machine, and you can see your files here. And this is how it works. Now we're gonna have the pattern attribute. The input pattern attribute specifies a regular expression that the input field's value is checked against when the form is submitted. The pattern attribute works with the following input types: text, data search, URL tell, email, and password. Tip: use the global title attribute to describe the pattern to help the user. Tip: learn more about regular expressions in the JavaScript tutorial. So you can check out this article if you wanna learn more about Java regular expressions. And the example is an input field that can contain only 3 letters, no numbers or special characters. Okay, so we're gonna go to our Visual Studio Code. We're gonna delete this piece of code that we just grabbed before, and we're just gonna copy this one, and we're gonna paste it inside of our body section. So we have the form element. Inside of that, we're gonna have the label element and an input element. So let's check it out. Let's see how our code looks like. So we're gonna have country code. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna have this one, and we have the label element. We have the for attribute is gonna be country underscore code. The context is gonna be country code colon. The input element is gonna have type of text, so the type attribute is gonna be text. The ID is gonna be country underscore code. The name is gonna be country underscore code. Now we're gonna have the pattern attribute, equal sign, double quotes. Inside of the double quotes, we are gonna have open brackets. So we're gonna have a hyphen z, lowercase a hyphen lowercase z. Now we're gonna close the brackets and we're gonna open curly braces and the number 3, and then we close the curly braces, so you can you have 3 characters here. And now we're gonna have the title attribute, equal sign, double quotes, 3-letter country code, 3-letter country code. Okay, so I'm assuming we're gonna have a button here. So let me see, we can go to our website, and let me see if I have, okay, but I don't have the submit button. And let's just click here, try it ourselves. Okay, so we have the country code and then we have the submit. So the input pattern attribute, the pattern attribute specifies a regular expression that the input element's value is checked against. Okay, no, the pattern attribute of the input tag is not supported in Safari 10 or earlier. Okay, so now we are gonna have only, okay, so the pattern has to be three letters. So what happens if I put 3 numbers, 1 1 1? Let me see what happens. Submit. Please match the requested format, 3-letter country code. Okay, we are using numbers here, but okay, so in the pattern attribute, equal sign, double quotes, inside of the double quotes we want 3 letters. So we're gonna open brackets, we're gonna use uppercase letter A, then hyphen uppercase letter C, then lowercase letter a hyphen and lowercase letter z, and then we close brackets, we open curly braces and the number of letters that we want, in this case 3, and then we close curly braces. So if I type in, for example, I don't know, four letters, let's see if it works. No. Please match the requested format, 3-letter country code. So I'm gonna go for 3-letter country code. So submit, and it works. So the server has processed your input and returned this answer. Okay, so it works. So that is that. That is how, if you wanna ask for the 3 letters, you have to use the pattern attribute. Okay, so now we're gonna move to the next example. The placeholder attribute. The input placeholder attribute specifies a short hint that describes the expected value of an input field, a sample value, or a short description of the expected format. The short hint is displayed in the input field before the user enters a value. The placeholder attribute works with the following input types: text, search, URL tell, email, and password. So now we're gonna have this example, and this time the type is gonna be tell. So let's just first have empty our body section. I'm just gonna grab this piece of code, I'm gonna paste it inside of the body section, and let's open it. Let's see how it looks like. So okay, we enter a phone number. So enter a phone number, we have the form element, we have the label attribute, the label element, we have the for attribute. The for attribute is going to be set to phone, enter a phone number. Then we're going to have the input element, the type attribute is going to be tell. As you can see, we have text, date, number, file, and now the type attribute is going to be tell. The ID is going to be phone, the name is going to be phone. Now we're going to have the placeholder attribute, equal sign, double quotes. Inside of the double quotes, we're going to have this pattern, these numbers, and this pattern: 1 2 3 hyphen 4 5 hyphen 6 7 8. Then we're going to have the pattern attribute, equal sign, double quotes, and then we're going to have open brackets 0-9 close brackets, then we open curly braces in the numbers that we want. In this case we want 1 2 3 3 numbers, 3 characters, then we close curly braces, then we have a hyphen, we open brackets again 0-9 because the numbers are gonna go from 0 to 9, then we close brackets and we open curly braces in the numbers. This time we want 2 numbers, we don't want 3, and the first one we wanted 3, now we want 2, and then we're gonna want 3 again. So we close the curly braces and then we have the final hyphen, open brackets 0-9, close brackets, open curly braces, and the number of characters, this time 3, we close curly braces. So this is how it looks like. I don't have a submit button here, so it doesn't matter if I type in anything. So let's check their example. So let's see what happened here. Okay, so I'm just gonna type 3 5, just gonna type some random numbers and submit. Please match the requested format. So I'm just gonna type now 8 numbers, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So let's click submit, nothing. Please match the requested format, and the requested formats are 3 characters first, then a hyphen, then 2 characters, then a hyphen, and finally we have 3 characters. So let's see if this works. Submit, and yeah, it worked. So as you can see, we are using the placeholder attribute for that, and we're using the pattern attribute. So that is that for that example. Now we're gonna move to the require attribute. The input require attribute specifies that an input field must be filled out before submitting the form. The require attribute works with the following input types: text, search, URL, tell, email, password, date pickers, number, checkbox, radio, and file. So we're gonna go to Visual Studio Code and we're gonna delete. We have to make sure that the body section is empty, so there's nothing in the body section, and we're just gonna copy and paste this piece of code that we have here. So we have the form element. Inside of the form element we're gonna have the label element. The for attribute is gonna be username, the context is gonna be username column, then the input element is gonna have a type attribute of text, the ID is gonna be username, the name is gonna be username, and the only difference here, or the important thing, is that we have the require attribute. So we're gonna save it, we're gonna open it, and this is how it should look like. And we have here the username. Please fill out this field. Please fill out this field. Okay, so let's check out their example, how they're doing it. So let me see this. Okay, the input require attribute. The require attribute specifies that an input field must be filled out before submitting the form. We have the username, and then we have a submit button. Okay, so as you can see here, when I mouse over it, it says please fill out this field. So what happens if I try to submit it? Please fill out this field. Nothing is gonna happen. So my username is gonna be 1111. Submit, and okay, unexpected close connection. Okay, what happened with my internet? Okay, so let me see if it works. Okay, it worked now. My username is a bunch of numbers here. So this is how it works. As you can see, we're just using the require attribute. But for example, let's just refresh it, and if I try to submit, there's nothing here. If I try to submit it, please fill out this field. But what happens if I remove this the require attribute? Let's remove it, let's run it, and now I don't have a please fill out this field. So I'm just gonna submit it. There's nothing here. I'm just gonna submit it, and it works. So it let me submit it. So that is the usefulness of the require attribute. Now we're gonna go to the step attribute. The input step attribute specifies the legal number intervals for an input field. Example, if step equals sign double quotes 3, legal numbers could be -3, 0, 3, and 6, etc. Tip: this attribute can be used together with the max and min attributes to create a range of legal values. So we have the step attribute works with the following input types. We have the number, the range, the date, datetime hyphen local, month, time, and week. So here we have an input field with a specified legal number interval. So let's just go to Visual Studio Code and let's make sure that the body section is empty. So let's just grab this piece of code and paste it, and let's see how it works, how it looks like. So let's open our website, and here I have a bunch of points, and it's gonna be the lower I can go is gonna be, oh okay, I don't have a limit here, okay, but we have the, in our code we have the label element. The 4 attributes is gonna be points. The input is gonna be, okay, the input element is gonna have a type attribute of number, an ID attribute of points, the name attribute of points, and the step is gonna be 3. So a step means that I'm gonna be moving from 3. Let me see if I go, okay, 3. Now if I go up it's gonna be 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and if I go down it's gonna go 3. So it's gonna be 15, 12, 9, 6, 3, 0. Okay, this is how it works. So let's click it here and try it yourself. Okay, what's happening with my internet? Okay, points. Now here we have the submit. So yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. So the step attribute, okay, the step attribute specifies the legal number intervals for an input element. So that is that. Input restrictions are not foolproof, and JavaScript provides many ways to add illegal input. To safely restrict input, it must also be checked by the receiver, the server. Okay, the autofocus attribute. The input autofocus attribute specifies that an input field should automatically get focused when the page loads. So this is the example. Let the first name input field automatically get focused when the page loads. So we're gonna go to our Visual Studio Code, delete this part, so we have an empty body section. We're gonna copy and paste this short piece of code. Okay, so we have this form element. Okay, so this is how it should look like. We have the first name, we have the last name. Okay, so we have the form element, we have 2 label elements, 2 input elements. Okay, the first label element, we have a 4 attribute of f name. Okay, the input element is going to have a type attribute of text, ID, and now it's going to have autofocus, and then you have your line break. And the second, we're going to have the label and the input. But here in line 13, we're going to have the input element, and we're going to have the autofocus attribute. So this is the autofocus attribute, as you can see. Okay, let's open their example. Okay, so yeah, it's focusing on the first one, and let's see. Okay, ours is it was a little small, but you can see that it has a focus here. The borders are darker, are kind of like are darker than the second one. For example, if I go to line 16 now, if I go to line 16 and I type the autofocus attribute, now the second one is going to be darker, the border is going to be darker, as you can see here. And that is pretty much for the autofocus attribute. You just have to type the word autofocus after the whatever attribute you're using. here they're using the input element, the type attribute, ID attribute, name attribute, and then you have the auto attribute. So that is that. And now we're gonna move into the height and width attributes. The input height and width attributes specify the height and width of an input type image, so element. So here we have angle brackets, input element type attribute equal sign, double quotes, image, close angle brackets. Here they given us a tip: always specify both the height and width attributes for images. If height and width are set, the space required for the image is reserved when the page is loaded. Without these attributes, the browser does not know the size of the image and cannot reserve the appropriate space to it. The effect will be that the page layout will change during loading while the image load. So we're gonna grab this piece of code and we're gonna go to Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna make sure that the body section is empty, and we're gonna paste the piece of code that we just grabbed, and let's see what happens. We're gonna press Alt plus L plus O, and this is how it should look like. So if I click it, okay, this is how it's looking. Our first name, last name, okay, so here, okay, let's go to Visual Studio Code, and line 16 we have the input element, we have the type attribute image, we have the, okay, so in line 17, okay, we have the source, and the source is going to be image underscore submit.gif. So I have this file here. I just grab any random file, I just rename it to match it as one, image underscore submit.gif. The description, the alt is gonna be a submit, the width is gonna be 48 pixels, and the height is gonna be 48 pixels. So you can modify the height. So let's play around. Let's put the width is gonna be 48. So let's see how it looks like. Okay, it looks really messed up. Let's just go back to 48. And now let's check out their example. So try yourself. I don't know what's happening with my internet. Okay, so yeah, this is the image that it should be. Okay, I should have this image, the input height and width attribute. Let me see if I can save image, and I'm just gonna go to what it was, programming, and it's gonna be JavaScript, and it's gonna be test, and I'm just gonna swap it. Okay, yeah, sure, I wanna replace it. So let's open our website and then let's see how it looks. Okay, now I have their image, and again, fair use, I'm using it for educational purposes. So here we have the input height and width attribute, so it's gonna be 48 pixels. And here when you click it, okay, yeah, when you click it, your form is gonna be received. And ours not, because we didn't implement a submit button, so it's just gonna go like that. But that's pretty much it. You can, as you can see, you can have your width and your height. You don't have to put 48 px, short for pixels. Let's see again, we can have, I don't know, let's put, I don't know, 100 for the width, and yeah, this is how it's gonna look like. So that is that for that example. We're gonna move to the list attribute. I'm gonna close this. The input list attribute refers to a data list element that contains predefined options for an input element. This is the example. We're gonna go to Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna make sure that the body section is empty. So let's see how it looks like. So we're gonna grab the form element or this piece of code, we're gonna paste it here, save it. We have the form element, we have the input element, we have the data list element, and then we're gonna have the ID attribute, and the ID attribute is gonna be browsers. And again, in line 12 we have the input element and we have the list attribute, and it's gonna be browsers. So let me see here. Okay, so inside of the data list element, we're gonna have 5 option elements, and they're gonna have value attributes. The first value attribute is gonna be Internet Explorer. The second one is gonna be Firefox. The third one is gonna be Chrome. The fourth is gonna be Opera, and the fifth is gonna be Safari. And then we're gonna end the data list tag. So this is how it should look like. So let's open it. And okay, so you have this empty kind of rectangle, and then you have this rectangle, and you have these 5 options. So you have Internet Explorer, you can delete it. You have Firefox, Chrome, Opera, and you can delete it. Okay, yeah, this is how it works. And as you can see in the code, we just have the form element. Inside of the form element, we are gonna have the input element, and inside of the input element, we're gonna have the list attribute, and the list attribute is gonna be set to what? =, double quotes, and inside of the double quotes are gonna be browsers. Then we're gonna have in the same level, so it's not gonna be inside of the input, it's gonna be inside of the form element, we're gonna have the data list element. We're gonna have the data list element with the ID attribute of browsers. Okay, so in this data list is gonna have 5 option elements with 5 value attributes, and these are the value attributes. So this is how it works, and you have the idea how it works here. We can move to the autocomplete attribute. The input autocomplete attribute specifies whether a form or an input field should have autocomplete on or off. So it can be turned on or turned off. Autocomplete allows the browser to predict the value. When a user starts to type in a field, the browser should display options to fill in the field based on earlier type values. The autocomplete attribute works with form and the following input types: text, search, URL, tell, email, password, date pickers, range, and color. So we're gonna go to Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna delete our form elements. So we have our body section empty, and we're gonna grab this piece of code here. Okay, so we're gonna paste it here, and okay, inside of the body section we're gonna have the form element. This is our form element from lines 11 to 19, and let's see how it looks like. So this is how it should look like: first name, last name, email, and then your button submit. So we have a submit button here, and it should send us to this file action_page.php, but we don't have a server, so that's fine. Okay, so we go to the code. We have the form element, we have the action attribute =, double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we have the place where they're sending us. So it's gonna be /action_page.php, and then we're gonna have the autocomplete attribute =, double quotes, and it's gonna be on. So we can read you can read all this example if you want, but okay. So autocomplete attribute indicates whether input elements can by default have their values automatically completed by the browser. This setting can be overwritten by the autocomplete attribute on an element belonging to the form. Possible values are off, on. So off, the user must explicitly enter a value into each field for every use, or the document provides its own autocompletion method. The browser does not automatically complete entries. On, the browser can automatically complete values based on values that the user has previously entered in the form. For most modern browsers, including Firefox 38, Google Chrome 34, EI11, setting the autocomplete attribute will not prevent a browser password manager from asking the user if they want to store login fields, username, and password. If the user permits the storage, the browser will autofill the login, and the next time the user visits the page. So you can see the autocomplete attribute and login fields. Note: if you set autocomplete to off in a form because the document provides its own autocompletion, then you should also set autocomplete to off for each of the form's input elements that the document can autocomplete for details. You can read these articles if you want. So we went about the autocomplete attribute inside of the form element. Now we're gonna have three label input, 3 label elements, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 input elements. So let's just make them like this. Okay, so we have the first one is going to be the label element, the for attribute. Then we're going to have the input element. The type attribute is going to be text. Okay, then we're going to have the second label element, for attribute, input element. The type is going to be text. The label element is going to be for attribute, email, and the input is going to be the input element is going to have a type attribute of email. So the first two is going to be text. The third one is going to have a type attribute of email, the ID, you have it here. And this one here we have the autocomplete attribute is going to be set to off, and the autocomplete here and the form action is going to be set to off. So we save it and we open our website, and this is how it should look like. So let's click it and try it yourself. And here we have the autocomplete attribute. The autocomplete attribute specifies whether or not an input field should have autocomplete enabled. Fill in and submit the form, then reload the page to see how autocomplete works. Notice that autocomplete is on for the form but off for the email field. So first name, last name, email. So let's go for first name. So the first name is going to be, I don't know, it's going to be John. The last name is going to be Doe. The email is going to be johndoe@gmail.com. So let's see, submit. Okay, and now we're gonna refresh the page. Let's see if it has autocomplete. or it has here John. Let me see. Okay, it has Doe. And for the email, it doesn't have autocomplete. So for the last name, what is the last name here? The last name. Okay, so for the last name is okay. Since we have the form element, we have the autocomplete attribute is set to on. But for the email should be in this part here. We have the label element, and the autocomplete is going to be set to off. Okay, so that is the reason that we don't have an autocomplete for the email. So let's try it again. I don't know, let's put it, let me see, what can we put? I don't know, Elan maybe. Let's put Elan mask, I don't know, email, Elan, whatever, gmail.com. So let's submit it. Okay, now refresh it. First name. Okay, so now we have these options. For the last name, now we're gonna have two options, do and must. So it has been autocomplete, but for the email since it's off, it's not gonna be autocomplete, because in the email here we have autocomplete set to off. That is that. You can play with more examples like that. In some browsers you may need to activate an autocomplete function for this work. Look under preference in the browser's menu. Okay, so now we're gonna move to the so we have the HTML form and input elements. We have the tag and the description. The form tag defines an HTML form for the user input, and finally we have the input tag that defines an input control.